Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales with Ryan Woodard
Ashleigh Early.
And today we have Ryann Dowdy. She is a sales expert and co-founder of Social Sellers Academy, which helps 7- and 8-figure CEOs generate daily sales on demand without more of their time by building and training high-performance sales team. Ryann is passionate about helping successful business owners take back control of the revenue in their business, their time, and their freedom by building a profitable sales team. With her business partner, Kelly Roach, they are on a mission to free CEOs from the role of salesperson in their business. And so, Ryann,
I am excited to be here. So thanks for the opportunity.
We're excited to have you.
So why don't we start off the same way we start off every episode, Ryann? Why don't you just walk us through kind of how you got to this point with this, I love that idea of the mission of freeing CEOs from being kind of their salesperson first idea, which is interesting because I work with a lot of early stage CEOs and I tell them you have to be this at least for a little bit. So I love this idea of getting big enough that they have to free themselves from it. But how did you land there? What does that journey look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start kind of at the beginning. It's a short story. So I actually landed in sales totally on accident, as a lot of people do. I actually studied PR in college and I interned for a public relations firm and learned when I started looking for a job after college that PR and sales were extremely similar, except for when somebody said yes in sales, you got paid commission. And that was not the case in PR, right? If you got somebody to feature your product or whatever, you just got your salary. So I clearly went the way of sales and grew up selling radio advertising in several cities across the United States, and then sold digital marketing, which is where I actually got into the startup space as well, and had a really cool opportunity to build sales organizations for rapid growth startups. So I did everything from sales to sales leader, sales manager, channel sales manager, director of sales, sales trainer, traveled the country training sales reps, and woke up one day back to work in my dream job of sales director of a digital marketing agency startup here in Kansas City, which is home for me, about 4 months in, and was like, I don't actually like this at all. And I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And had no idea what my next opportunity would be, because I had created somewhat of a golden handcuff opportunity. I was well paid, was the breadwinner in my family, had an infant at this point in time. My son is maybe 6 months old, and I have no idea what else I could possibly do to replace that salary. And then started networking and talking to people and learned more about online entrepreneurship in general. Never anticipated being an entrepreneur because I was a salesperson. I didn't need to be an entrepreneur, right? I was in control of my income. I could make as much money as I was willing to work for. But there were still some things involved in that. And being a woman in a sales role in a very male industry, felt the need to pretend like I wasn't a woman in a sales role. So it eventually came time for me to exit. And I actually started teaching sales to female entrepreneurs who never wanted to get into sales. So had fun doing that for a couple of years, and then partnering with Kelly finally on Social Sellers Academy, where we actually now have CEOs and getting where their businesses are getting bigger and they won't let go of the revenue generation piece in their business, or they let it go and they pitch it to a sales rep and train them for 5 minutes and then send them off to the races, and they're frustrated when they're not performing. And so that's kind of the gap that we look to fill in training those people. So it has been, 17 years at this point in the game, very self-taught for a long time, a lot of books, a lot of podcasts, until I was blessed to work for a company that actually took the time to train me. And I think that was kind of where it was infused in me, is no, we need to train salespeople. This is an incredible career if we would actually train people and teach them how to do it in a way that, is not pushy or annoying or sleazy or any of those other ways. I think sales is arguably one of the coolest careers out there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Ashleigh and I both agree. I love being in sales. Definitely the freedom that the flexibility that it gives you to pursue other angles or other kind of joys in life. So with that, what's something that's what's a door that's opened up from sales for you?
I mean, I think there's a lot of doors. Travel is a door that opened up for me. Being a career where I got to travel was really amazing. And then just really being open-minded to the idea of making a lot of money. Working in a career where the people around me did. And Ashleigh, I saw you kind of smile when I said that, but there's a lot of industries where we don't talk about it, right? We don't talk about money, and, it's just, oh, well, this is just what I do. And this is as much money as I can make. And I was like, no, I'm not okay with that. I love being in charge of how much money I make. So, financial freedom is a big deal. And then the ability to just be able to talk to people. I didn't know that that was challenging for others. It was just starting conversations with strangers. And so I think it just taught me interpersonally as well, be able to be in a room with a lot of different personalities and be able to handle what that looks like and feels like. So I think there's the professional piece, right? There's the monetary piece and the personal piece of being able to, like I said, deal with different personalities and different things.
No, you're spot on there. And it's interesting. We don't talk, I feel like we don't talk about the personal side of it enough too. Like this is one of those few careers that I feel like really does give back to your personal life when you do it properly. It can also completely extinguish your personal life if you let it. But from a self-awareness standpoint, from a growth standpoint, like you really can't get better at sales without consistently investing in yourself to make sure that you're becoming the best version of you that you can be. So
Yes.
that self-discipline and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if you see this. I see this a lot in training, but I feel like a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with training people, there's a good amount of skill, but I'd say probably it's 70-30, where 70% is just mindset and figuring out the mental blocks in your way versus like, oh, here's the technique to talk someone into doing something. 80% of it's getting out of your own freaking way and listening.
Yes. Yes. And what's wild, Ashleigh, is I didn't know that until I became an entrepreneur. I was very much raised in organizations where it was strategy, tactic, the numbers game. I mean, all things that are important, right? All of those things are very relevant. But aside from like, be a team player and have a good attitude, it wasn't until I started going on the entrepreneur journey of totally trying to change my identity from the person I've been for 15 years to being somebody else that I really learned the power of mindset and the power of how much we hold ourselves back and our thoughts and our beliefs. And so yeah, I realize it now. And again, that's something else I'm passionate about is why are we not talking more about this within just more traditional organizations around the power of mindset, right? We'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring in a consultant to do training, but like nobody wants to talk about like what's going on in our brain and the stories we're telling ourselves and our own head trash,
So can you give us an example of like, what's a block that you've had to work through?
From a sales perspective, one of the biggest blocks that I had to work through was the money block, right? Like really staying out of other people's wallets, determining what pricing was right based on what, prejudging, prospects based on what I think or what I know or any of those things. And so, I mean, for me and what we wind up coaching on the most, it's the money story, right? The money story of what we're selling and, nobody can afford it or we're overpriced or our competitors are cheaper and everybody's looking for the cheapest option. That is probably one I've had to do the most work on is realizing that nobody is buying for any of those reasons. That's definitely been one that I've had to work hard on and that we wind up coaching and training on a lot in the work that I've done.
I actually needed to hear that today. So thank you for that. I needed reminding of that literally. I literally was working on a proposal right before this. I'm going to be doing another one right after this. And I'm going to go back and change those pricings now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's smart. I've had account executives that like, basically I explained it as like, we're going to discount to zero. This is just the race to zero. What are we discounting for? Well, we know XYZ is in on this deal, so we got to be competitive. Why can't we build value? Why do we have to be? I mean, at that point, it's like we're devaluing our product to compete with somebody that's not even in our space. So is this really like, is this your fear or is this the customer's fear that we're projecting here? And 9 times out of 10, it's our own internal fear. We like have this attachment to a deal or to a prospect. I mean, even like in SDR work, sometimes I would get attached to accounts that would tell me to go away. And it's like, dude, they don't want to talk to you. Why? Like equating it to like dating, you're going to be that creepy guy that's hanging around when she's on a date and like, come on, dude, what are you doing?
This is not a John Hughes movie. You don't get to hang around and be creepy until she says yes. She will not say yes.
Exactly.
And I think there's another thing there too, which I want to bring up quickly just to unpack is this fear of no.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're so like, I see that a lot. And I've had a few points in my own journey with entrepreneurship and stuff. It's really taught me, God, I am scared of hearing no. And I'm more than anything, I'm scared of saying no. Cause I think if I say no, they'll say no. Mm-hmm. And every time someone has asked for a discount and I've said no and told them why, I always did why, because that's fair. No one's ever backed out.
Right.
Never.
I know. No,
it's crazy. And it comes back to that value, because it's like, no, I price this at what I think is fair, period.
There was a conversation happening in a mastermind that I'm in where, you know, a prospect or a client had actually asked, you know, the service provider for something, and she was afraid to say no because she didn't want to upset the client, and he was a really great referral source, and she was afraid if she said no to offering this service that she didn't anyway. And one guy jumped in and just said, hey, you know, I ask for discounts all of the time, not because it is mandatory that I buy, but he said more than half of the time when he asks for a price concession, people say yes. So he's like, I just ask, like, why not? And he was like, it has nothing to do with how I see the value. He's been trained that if he asks, half the time he's going to get it. So of course, right? He's a smart businessman. Why would I not ask? So I think that's really remarkable as well, because we fear that no kills the deal, right? Instead of better understanding where the ask comes from, right? You know,
and it's knowing your champion, it's knowing your buyer. A lot of buyers, you can know they're going to come at you with a price objection if you just scope the deal properly. It's like, hey, I know, like if they mention bidding, if they mention any sort of these other things, or if so-and-so the boss, but you're not going to get to the boss, you know, the boss is going to ask for a discount. You know, these things are coming. So you can be like, hey, I get you've got to ask. I understand. We did basis off of X, Y, and Z. We're going to sit tight. And especially when it comes to competitors and stuff like that, it's so easy to get, it's this whataboutism. This idea of like this whataboutism it's really common in politics. Look up the term if you don't know what it is. It's really fascinating, but it's a logical fallacy that deflects and shifts the tone of the conversation. So it's like you're saying, hey, I want a discount. And you can use whataboutism to be like, hey, I understand you want a discount, but look at all the great value that you get. And now we're talking about the value, not about the discount.
Right.
Whataboutism, when done improperly, is like, hey, so-and-so's dressed inappropriately, and it's, oh, I don't care. What about the fact that what about so-and-so who did this other crazy thing last week? Well, no, we need to come back and figure out whatever we were talking about there.
Right.
So it's kind of crazy. But it's this pivot price. And like you said, it's people don't buy based on price very rarely, unless you're in a legitimately commoditized market, which ad sales terrifies me for that reason. Full respect to anybody who does ad sales, because that stuff's scary, because it is so commoditized. If you're dealing with anything, like there is no product that does exactly what you do. So just talk about why you're different and the value of that difference. And then all of a sudden price is irrelevant, because now they know what they're getting.
Right. Absolutely. And it's funny that you said that, Ashleigh. I never felt that way when I was selling advertising, because it did feel like we, you know, the agencies and the companies that I worked for, we did things to stand apart from a service perspective. You know, I've never worked for a company where I sold the cheapest, like was never the cheapest, like radio station, when I was selling print, when I was selling, even like when we were doing Facebook ad management and Google ad management, we were never the cheapest. Like we always just focused on, the value that we brought to the table, and, you know, always worked for kind of the high touch, like white glove service providers. So for me, I never felt commoditized. Like I was always like, yeah, you know, absolutely. You can go work with ABC, XYZ, and they'll set up your account, never look at it again, you know, but you could do that yourself, you know? So that was kind of always the way that we positioned it, was the service we provided, not the ads we were buying. Cause ads are ads.
See, and now I know something about that ad space.
All right. How do you think, like so you mentioned that your most recent company, you guys kind of like take the CEO away from the revenue responsibility. What has been kind of like, I guess, one of like the most challenging aspects of that? Because I feel like there's probably some similarities across a lot of these orgs, but then, you know, there's probably those ones that stand out, probably for better or for worse, from those experiences.
Yeah, great question, Ryan. So there's a couple of things happening. One, there's a lot of business owners who feel like nobody can do it as well as they can, right? So that's one of the biggest issues is, you know, I can't afford to lose leads or lose opportunities by having somebody in here who's not as good as me. An honest answer to that is that no, they're not going to be as good as you in the beginning, right? The data tells us that it can take anywhere from, you know, 8 to 10 months to have a sales rep fully functioning. 100%. But if that person's job is to spend 100% of their time driving revenue, and your job as the business owner, where you're only spending 15% of your time driving revenue, the law of averages and the numbers, rules, and sales at all will ultimately mean that this person should potentially generate more revenue than you would in the limited time that you have. So that's one of our biggest ones, is they're not good enough. Or they're not going to be as good as I am, and they're just not, right? Like, it's your baby, it's your business, you're the founder, you created it, like it's your heart and soul for so many people. So that's the first one. And another big challenge, Ryan, is feeling like they don't have time. I don't have time to hire the person, and then I don't have time to train the person, and I don't have time to create the training resources that they would need, and then I have to manage the person, right? And then it's the job that it creates, right? When we roll out a salesperson, we now become sales manager, and so there's a lot of fear around that. I'm just swapping jobs at this point in the game. But again, it's okay, right? But this is short-term sacrifice, for long-term gain. It's discipline is sacrificing what we want now for what we want most. Is kind of that idea. So yeah, absolutely. It's going to take a lot of time, but theoretically, again, if we're growing a true sales organization, you're eventually going to elevate someone into leadership, who then you get to roll out of that job and be CEO, business owner, creative, like whatever is your jam. So those are kind of the two biggest challenges we see in here, is like, A, they're not going to be as good, and I'm going to burn through leads, or B, the amount of time that it takes and the new job that it then creates for that business owner.
And I feel like that's kind of like a profound thing to get across to them. Is it usually received pretty open-mindedly, or is there a lot of like friction, and you kind of have to like, look, dude, you hired us for a reason, get on board with this, or else I think of like those like not Top Chef, but like the ones where they go in, they fix a restaurant. Like, you're almost like having to like put the law
Kitchen
down.
Nightmares, Restaurant Impossible, Bar Rescue. Those are all my guilty pleasure trash shows. Like, I don't do Real Housewives. I do bar rescue shows, bar and restaurant rescue shows. Yeah.
We're going to have to do like a sales rescue show now and pitch it to A&E.
That would be so great for us and so boring for the rest of humanity.
As I said that, I was thinking the same thing. Like, nobody would watch it. It wouldn't even get through a full first season.
Make it a YouTube show.
Do it. No, it's met with resistance all over the place. But so what we do as sales, like, we're the sales training organization, so they have to be like 50% bought in before they would ever hire us anyway. But we're doing a lot of like our content marketing is very much geared towards the education of that, like seeing past the painful next 6 to 12 months to seeing where your company can grow in 3 to 5 years if you embrace this. So it's just, you're just kicking success down the road the longer that you stay stuck here. So we're doing a lot of educating and vision casting and that sort of stuff. And I play in, online entrepreneurship, which is different because, there's no tech involved. It's very easy. There's a very low barrier of entry. So there's not a lot of people talking about running a true company, right? Not just being I'm just a service provider, right? I'm just a freelancer, or I'm just a, social media manager, or I'm just a whatever. So really just educating about like true, like how to build a company and how to build a true organization. So we're working on it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
As someone at this point, I'm going to be checking out your website a lot more closely after this, but
and in fear of like getting lashed by our CEO, I'll probably check it out too and maybe recommend some stuff over to. We're a fast-paced startup, and we're kind of having some of these growing pains. So yeah, please forgive me, Cameron, if you end up watching this.
Love it. So Ryan, before we kind of did a quick call before we started recording and stuff like that, and you brought up something that you and I kind of share. We actually share a bit of a passion for, which I want to make sure we talk about a little bit. And that's, you mentioned kind of at the top that this is we all share this fundamental belief that this is one of the best careers you can have. And I love John Barrows to death. And he's kind of quoted as being the guy who he's the first person I heard say sales is the best career in the world when done properly, and the worst career in the world when done wrong, which is spot on. But one of the things I think that makes it such a great career is when it's done right, which it is hard to do right, but when it's done right, it opens doors for literally anyone. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what country you're from. I don't care how much money your parents made, what your education level is, whether you serve in the military or not, what your mental health state is, as long as you are healthy and stable. like, you can do this job and be wildly successful. And one of the things that not a lot of people talk about, which is ridiculous, and especially as we have more and more women in the workplace and we have more and more families in the workplace, is how fantastic a career this is for parents.
Yes.
Like it kind of made me laugh a little bit. I've said multiple times on this show and on others, like, if you give me the choice between like a Harvard grad and a teen mom, I'll take the teen mom every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Because that parent, teen parent even, they had to grow up a hell of a lot faster than anybody else. They know how to manage their time. They know how to manage a kid. Like, that is a level of organization and maturity that not a lot of other people have. I don't have. I'm struggling with 2 dogs. So it's, yeah, Ryan and I are sitting here with our dog parent life, going respect to the parents, especially during COVID. Like, I mean, it was easy enough to transit for everyone to go inside sales. Realistically, it was easy enough, but doing inside sales with kids crawling all over you, like, I know a few people who they've actually turned their kids into like LinkedIn stars because there's adorable, children standing with like headphones on their heads and stuff while daddy calls or mommy calls. It's the cutest thing.
I love it.
But it's fascinating to me, this idea, Ryann, too. You had some really great insights on kind of the overlap of family in sales. And that's something we talk about. It's one thing to talk about, like, hey, sales is great because you can to a certain amount set your hours, you can be flexible, you can be there for the recitals, you can take the kids to school. As long as you're intentional and manage your time properly, it's not hard to do these things. But there really is a family overlay that isn't talked about as much.
I agree. And I saw it, the way that the reason this became a passion for me is when I was the director of sales for an ad agency and I was advertising for jobs. Like, I was trying to hire salespeople. Like, I would get, 8 to 10 male candidates for every 1 female candidate. And even when we went to like job fairs, right? The women that approached our tables wanted creative jobs, and the dudes that approached our tables always wanted the sales jobs. And so for me, the hot button is very much women, but families as a whole. And yes, there's the flexibility aspect of it. To me, that's always the biggest thing. When you are in a performance-based role, right, your performance dictates your time. Right. When you perform well, you can move things around. If you're like we teach a lot of social sales, right? If you're doing a lot of your interacting and engaging online, like, that can be done at different times of the day, right? It's not required from 8 to 5 or any of those other things. So for me, I think sales creates a great space for families because it creates a lot of flexibility as long as you are performing. It also creates rapid growth. Right? Let's not kid. Raising children is expensive. And, so if you are in a place where you are money motivated, or, you want to take your family on a vacation or something along those lines, having the cash to do that, right? Sales is going to allow you to do that a lot faster than if you're just in a traditional role as well. And I also think that you can learn a lot about sales from small children. You guys don't have small children, but I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and there are no better salespeople in the planet than my children. Like, they just assume the sale all of the time, and like, they just don't care about no. Like, it doesn't matter. My 2-year-old, even, like, everything you tell her no, she's like, please, mommy, please. And then she'll ask the question in a different way. And then you can distract her, but she'll come back and ask again. Like, she really, and so for me, even just watching them, I'm like, oh, the tenacity and the persistence. I mean, the why is a lot, right? But they're just fantastic salespeople. So I think in general, sales creates a really cool container where you can be excellent at what you do. You can be in control of your income. You can have control of your time to a certain perspective. And then when you're working for a cool company, you get to make an impact, which I really love as well. When you sell something that you're passionate about or excited about. So I think that it's a really great space for families, specifically for women as well. And I think there's a misconception that sales, and this is probably what you're talking about, Ashleigh, from the idea of doing it wrong, that like, oh, I just got to work all the time and I've got to be on all the time, and, all of the travel and all of the this and all of the that. And that's actually one thing I think that the pandemic did well for sales, was taught us that maybe some of that airplane travel isn't really necessary, right?
I think it taught a lot of leadership that it wasn't exactly necessary. I think they've been bucking at the rising cost of it for years. This just kind of like, oh wait, we can actually, we can turn that off.
Yeah.
Good
or
to know.
save it to a closing meeting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that the misconception is that sales is A, very aggressive and very male, and then B, it's also a lot of travel and a lot of time away and a lot of pressure, which is true. But that's why when it's done well, when you're in a good organization where your leadership sets you up for success and you're selling something you're passionate about, I think it's a really excellent career for families, for parents as a whole who want that space where they can be uber successful and still be present with their families.
Well, you hit something there I want to drive into really quick, which is kind of when it's done well. The other thing I think matters there is selling the right product.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people, and it breaks my heart, who leave sales or talk about leaving sales. And it's not that they think it's because they weren't good, but in my opinion, it's because they were selling the wrong product. Yeah. So my dad was a great example of this, actually. Not that he left, but I was raised by a salesperson. So I was like, yeah, I don't want to be in sales. My dad traveled all the time. It wasn't really very happy because in my early years, he did travel. He traveled a ton. So I've joked with a few people about this. Like he missed the skin knees and little things like that, but he was there for all the recitals. He made sure he was home for all the big things. He was a really good dad. And he switched when I was, I don't know, however old I was, like not quite 10-ish, but like that age. He was like, nope, I need to be more present. He shifted, and he was able to do that because he was successful to a significantly less travel role. And he was there and he was present. And then when we were gone, he started traveling a little bit more again. And then he stopped because he didn't want to do it anymore. Like the job and the type of sale that you're doing, if you're struggling with a super high volume sort of role, go look for something that's much more consultative, maybe bigger ticket, longer sales cycle. Like, it's all a spectrum. It's all about the environment that suits your personality and your sales style. It's not just like, oh, I can't do this consultative thing. It's not working out. You go and try and, not everyone's going to do well at Oracle. That's okay. Oracle is not the be all and the end all. Not everyone's going to do great at Salesforce. Those are two giant organizations. The people that thrive there would not do well at itty bitty teeny tiny startups.
Right.
It's a completely different skill set and a completely different salesperson that's doing it. Like the salesperson that's working at that, who is sales hire number one. Those are unique people. Those are very special, unique people that I have so much respect for, because that is freaking hard. And those are not the same people in most cases that are going to be leading a 500-person sales team. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different skill set. And yet somehow their income has the potential to actually be reasonably similar. It's just different types of risk.
I think the product is really important too. And
yes,
we forget that, I forget who it is. And it's actually multiple people I've heard. It's like, sales is literally the transfer of inspiration, right? Like that's what they say that sales is you have to inspire someone to take action. Right. Because I feel like as salespeople, we lose more deals to the status quo, than we do to price or any of the other garbage we tell ourselves that it is, right? Like we lose a lot of sales to it's bigger pain in the ass to make the change than to just stay stuck. Right. So I think that that's really, really important, but we can't inspire if we don't believe. And I know that feels a little woo and a little airy fairy. And I think if you would have said that to me 5 years ago, I kind of would have laughed at you and been like, just go to work. But I think as we become more enlightened as professionals, where we realize, no, it matters that I matter. It matters that the work that I do matters. It matters that I make a difference. And I think we forget that because we're like, oh, it doesn't make a difference if you're selling cars or selling software or selling enterprise solutions, it's all the same. And while I believe the fundamentals of sales are all the same, how you show up when you're selling each one of those things is very different based on how you feel about that thing. So I agree with you as well, Ashleigh, is that people will try to sell one thing. Maybe they tried product sales and they're like, yeah, it's not for me. Like, I just can't hawk products on people, But yeah, if they were to sell a service or something consultative or something that they felt really strongly about or felt was really transformational for people, they might kick ass at it. So I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective, but I do think that's probably a huge reason why some people are uber successful and others aren't. It's just a bad match of what they're actively selling.
Yeah, I agree too. And honestly, 2020, it was hard to feel like you were doing anything meaningful when my mom's a nurse. My wife is in nurse leadership. So she would get up before me and be out of the house while I'm like getting the dogs ready for a walk. And then she'd come home after me while I was here all day working. So I just felt like, I don't know, like a imposter syndrome type feeling, like, oh, here I am, like almost guilt. Like,
Oh, totally.
I'm walking the dogs in the morning with like no time constraint. Where like I can wake up and there's 2 hours before I'm really like called upon to do anything. And literally it's like she's up, she's brushing her teeth, fixing coffee, grabbing a banana, and out the door to go save lives. And it was tough to like, you know, feel like I was doing anything meaningful. So I definitely agree, like having the right product and the right team around you is super important to finding your passion and finding that like it that makes you get up and go. And so one thing, especially since I've moved to a different organization, that's really, really helped me is having my direct report, his name's Cliff. So I hope he listens to this. I don't know how, but he has like infectious energy every single day.
Yeah,
And it's like,
those lovely people who you think they've had a couple cups of coffee and they are just so happy to see you. And it's like, it would almost be annoying if it weren't so utterly charming. You almost want to throttle them and hug them at the same time.
well, and to have it in a sales leader is like I was almost like at first like this guy's a little weird, but then like I'm weird too. We both nerded out, and then it's like you can feel that it's genuine. Like the people that I've recruited to come over and join me in this SDR journey and this team that I'm building, they have expressed the same thing. I had one lady that like was kind of come see, come saw on the offer. And then like I just brought Cliff in and he was like my closer. And she's like, yeah, I'll forego waiting for commission from this current sales gig and just come sign with you guys and start. So I don't know, is there anybody in your career that's just been like that over the top, not what you expected, and like a sales leader that really, I guess, kind of like embodied almost the other side of sales? Because I feel like Cliff has really done that for me in my new role. So who's your Cliff, I guess, to bring it full circle?
Who is my Cliff? So, there's a lot of different people in my career who have impacted me in different ways, but I had one leader and I worked for him for a very short period of time, but he was the first leader that I ever saw whose team would like walk through fire for him. I worked for a guy, his name was Jim Collins, not the author. The guy, his name is Jim Collins. I literally maybe worked for him for 4 or 5 months, working for a startup based out of DC. And he was just like, he was the kind of guy, like when you hit goal for the month, you got like a handwritten note full of glitter. Don't open it. It gets everywhere. But like his wife did it, which was super sweet and fun. And like, he was just the coolest dude. And he always made you feel like the only person in the room, even in a big group of people. And so when you were doing your one-on-one or when you were, in a group environment, like he was the first person who made me feel like my results were not just based on the numbers, but based on who I was as a person. So I think, Ryan, the reason that I would call Jim my Cliff is because it made me realize, because I wasn't in leadership at the time. It's what made me realize that like when I get the opportunity to lead a team of people, I want to be like Jim. Right. And I was also really blessed. I didn't work for a lot of like really bad bosses from what I've heard from salespeople, but I did have a lot of people who were like, okay, you were only as good as your last deal. And I always felt that way. But with Jim, you never felt that way. Even the people on our team who were underperforming never felt that way. Right. Even though they were underperforming and they were having difficult conversations and some of them had to be exited from the organization, you were never made to feel like less of a human because of that. So that's the person who I would say, if it's ever like, who do you want to embody from a leadership perspective and from a sales perspective, it was Jim.
That's awesome.
Everyone needs a Jim in their life. Everyone needs something like that. And you hit something there, which is so, and I don't think this is unique to sales, but I think this is a more unique, actually, no, I don't think it's that unique from a historical perspective, but this idea that we are our jobs. And so when a job ends, it's a breakup, it's a death, there's a grieving that has to happen, but it's so much easier when it's done with humanity. Hey, you're a good person. Good things are coming for you. This isn't a fit. And it's not some cheesy, like, oh my God, you're destined for better things. It's not you, it's me. It's not that sort of cheese. It's literally like, hey, we've been working really hard. We both know this is not working. I'm here for you. We can brainstorm, but that humanity, it's the difference between a trauma and just a natural part of the process of life. There's still going to be pain, but having been through painful exits and not painful exits, it's that humanity is all the difference in the world. And it's so rarely given to salespeople. It's crazy. I mean, if you look at what severances are given to other departments versus are given to salespeople, and when you think about what a high percentage of our pay is commission, and typically they stop paying commission the moment you leave, which means any commissions that weren't processed. I mean, no joke. I think we all know people who've been literally let go the day before deals close so that the companies don't have to pay the commission on the big deal. It's shady as hell, but it happens and it sucks. But it's that little bit of humanity is so powerful. And I love that idea. I mean, it's that Maya Angelou quote, the people will never remember, and I'm going to botch it again, but it's people don't remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. So
yes.
And that's true in sales too.
But it goes back to the parenting thing, right? To the sales being a great place for families and for parents is this conversation that we're having. What you're explaining, Ashleigh, is what most people think of when they think of sales, right? Instead of, thinking through the positive parts of sales. I'm sure I said this to you, Ashleigh, in our initial conversation, is like, there's not a movie out there where there is a positive portrayal of a salesperson or sales organization, right?
There are 2 movies that I think do it well, but it's only 2 out of like 50.
Give it to me. Which 2?
Tommy Boy.
Okay.
Which I love. And Pursuit of Happiness, I think is also pretty good. But like, that's literally it.
Right.
Those are the only 2. And I only got those 2 because I literally said the same thing. I was like, I do not think of a sales movie, of a movie where salespeople are portrayed with any sort of respect.
Right.
Even. We're not the manipulative, trying to get people to buy things they don't need. I mean, it took me 3 or 4 sittings to get through Glenn Ross because it was so painful to me to watch. I was like, no, Alec Baldwin's funny as hell, don't get me wrong. But like, once they actually move out of that scene, which is the first 10 minutes, into the rest of the movie, it's pulling teeth of them trying to get people to buy timeshares they don't need. And it's like, oh, no, don't. Why are you presumptive closing on people who clearly don't have money for this shit?
Yeah. But I think that's what people get. And so then again, I'm a parent, and then we get this feeling the need to be secure, right? We need a secure job, and sales is not a secure job, right? Because we'll fire your ass the day before the big deal closes. And that's, there's a lot of that happening. And so that's why I am excited about, I'm probably one of very few people. So I'm technically a millennial. I'm just an old millennial. But I'm excited about the change in regime of people who that's not the motivation, right? And again, there's always assholes in every environment, and you're always going to find the bad guy in the bad company and the people with the whatever. But I don't believe in looking for that. I believe in looking for the people who want to do good things. And so that's why for me, it's not just let's find parents jobs in sales organizations. It's let's find parents jobs in sales organizations that want,
I want those skills,
but that people that want to be, the work that they do. And that's actually what I do love about selling to online entrepreneurs, is that many of them started their businesses out of passion, right? Like it's because of a gift that they have. And so they're very passionate about getting their clients amazing results, which also winds up making them good leaders, because they're so passionate, they will always prioritize the client, right? Because to them, that's their reputation. And so I do find that those types of rapid growth companies in the online space are great places to work, because the CEO, the founder, is extremely passionate about the client that they serve, the results that people get, their online reputation. So they have to hire good people, and they have to take care of those people, because that's, the salesperson is the extension of their brand.
Absolutely.
To piggyback on Maya Angelou, I'm just going to say, you can only become truly accomplished at something you love. Another quote by her. So I feel like it's appropriate, because they got to be passionate and love what they're doing.
I love that.
I was going to say too, I've been trying to explain to my sales reps as well, that this isn't a marriage. You're like dating the company, because if they fire you, you don't get alimony, you don't get anything. It's just peace, good luck. So approach it with that mindset. I think some people get married to the company they work for a little too soon or too quick, when the company's not married to them. And that can lead to like that disconnect and that friction, to where you think you're giving it your all and you deserve something, and they don't have that same outlook on the employee relationship. So treating it as such and kind of understand you don't have like the rights of somebody that's married. You're not the CEO. So that helped me like navigate kind of my work journey and not be so emotionally invested at times and feeling like this has to work. This is the job for me. This is the job I was meant to do. No, this is just the job that hired me for this period of time. There's probably going to be many other times throughout that I'm working somewhere else, or, that I'm working at a job.
I actually took it a step further after my fourth layoff in 3 years. Was it 3 years? No, fourth layoff in just over 2.5 years. I took it a step further and I had this kind of epiphany. Everyone talks about blue collar and white collar. Blue collar, the company is renting your body. White collar, the company's renting your brain. You can rent my brain. This is what it costs. When you stop paying dues, great. I'm going to go rent it to somebody else. That's really helped. And then it becomes a question of, okay, you can rent my brain for pay, and I better get some other experience, some challenges, some other things going to make my brain better. So the next time I rent it, I can rent it at a higher rate. Mm-hmm. So it's, what am I going to rent my brain for, and what's going to help me raise my rate?
I like that.
And thinking through, yeah, that was my epiphany in early 2020. Mm-hmm. So it's a fascinating mix, though, kind of how you blend all these things together. And it's really interesting too, I think, tying it back to the very beginning, even the self-limiting beliefs. Mm-hmm. I have to stay here. Yeah, I can't be a jumper. Screw, everyone's a jumper at this point. 2020 made everybody a jumper. Stop panicking about that. Any company that considers you a jumper, you don't want to work there. These money, where, how long you need, what role you need. A lot of people think I have to go into leadership. No, you don't. A lot of people think, oh, you need, I see a lot more these days too. People like, oh, I need this, or I need to do that, or I should do this, or I should do that. You don't need or should anything. Mm-mm. Nothing. Everything. I literally was on I no joke, I was on a webinar earlier this year, and somebody said, oh, you should never hire a sales manager with no closing experience. And I was like, curious, we've had this conversation, we've been talking for, I said, how many years closing experience do you think I have? Like, well, you've been doing this for 10 years. I said, I never had a closing role until I started my own company. So, and I could just tell it kind of rattled his brain a little bit. He was a little like, exception that proves the rule. It's like, okay, sure. Tell yourself that. But I told myself that when I was applying for roles. I didn't reach as much as I probably could have. Not that I would have gotten anything, but it's fascinating looking back and looking at these things. And I think it's important too to work with people like Ryann or Ryan. I'm very happy I didn't mix you two up at any point in this, to have someone call you out on those self-limiting beliefs too, because a lot of times it's really hard to figure out when you're in one. Mm-hmm. It can be really tricky. And I'll say, like Ryann, even it's so important, I think, for parents to identify as parents. Mm-hmm. I was, no joke, 5 years into my sales career before I found a saleswoman who had children. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there were ones, but I didn't know about it. So for the first 5 years of my sales career, the narrative in my head was, I have a career or I have kids. Mm-hmm. And it took another 5 years in sales, so almost 10 years in sales for me to go, okay, well, is it possible? One, do I want this, which is a different thing. But like for myself, is it possible? Mm-hmm. That's insane that somebody who's been in sales for as long as I have still has those beliefs in their head, those questions. Mm-hmm. But it's reality because there aren't that many. Mm-hmm. So thank you for coming on and sharing that, because it's so important and there's all this positive there.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too, again, coming from the startup space, I know, Ashleigh, that's your jam as well. And I know obviously very clearly work for a startup. Startup space is a little wild too, because it tends to be a younger population because it's not secure, right? Like it's not, there's a lot like even my parents were like, do you want to work for startups? And I'm like, I do. Like, I love working for, I didn't know until I worked for one. And then I loved it, which was why entrepreneurship made so much sense for me, because I could build sales organizations and hand them back, because that's what I really love to do. But you know, it's that younger population as well, which makes it even harder to find somebody who embodies where you want to go when your leadership team, you know, is young as well. So that's one of those things where we don't see a lot of it. Just in general, male, female, doesn't matter, right? There's not even a lot of people that are married and have children at all, much less women who are married and have children in leadership roles in organizations. So if you're in, you know, the technology space and stuff, it's even harder to find in the startup space for sure, because it tends to be young founders and people who are scrappy and working around the clock and all of those different things. So, but it's something that I want to open the minds of the salespeople, but I also want to open the minds of the founders. Like, I forget who it was who told me that, like, what they love to do is hire part-time salespeople that were stay-at-home moms, like whose kids had gone back to school, because they were like, they don't want to work long hours. They don't want a full-time job, right? They want to work from 9 to 3 while their kids are in school. And they're the most efficient humans on the planet. Like, they get more shit done than most people do in a day because they're used to chasing kids. And you get very short windows of time to be productive with small children around. So like, there's some people that see it and some that don't. And my goal is just to open the mind of at least write the damn job description so people will apply.
So true. And there are, if I know specifically, if you're looking at outsourced SDRs, I know of 2 or 3 companies that specifically hire people like that. And you want to, if you're looking at outsourcing SDRs, hit me up. I will hook you up with some of these companies I've used in the past as an SDR leader to augment my team. They're fantastic. I know a few that do a really good job. It's not good for everybody, but it's such a smart thing to do. And and I see that a lot for SDR work too. Like, if you, like, I know 5 or 6 women who are the best SDRs I know. No joke. They make 120 to 180 a year, but they're SDRs, but they do that working probably 30 hours a week only while their kids are in school, because they're just freaking ruthless. And I love them for it, because it's exactly that. It's like, no. I have these hours. You tell me what I need to do. I will get it done.
Right.
But like, it is awe-inspiring. And it's such a great opportunity for them, because it gets them, I mean, what other job can you do that? What other job can you set your hours? Can you set your pay? Can you dictate your rates? And put up or shut up. And there's so many resources out there to help you get there. So it's fascinating. So to wrap this up, Ryann, we end every episode the same way here on Other Side of Sales with the lightning rounds. We're going to go through a series of rapid fire questions. Don't think none of these are too heavy, designed to be a little bit of fun. Starting out with, and I'm curious, especially because there's kids, what's your morning routine?
Ooh, I get up at 5 a.m. because I have kids. So I get up at 5. I usually meditate, read some sort of book, work out, and then shower and get ready to get my kids out the door to start my day, usually somewhere between 8 and 9. So I'm pretty consistent with it. It's the only time my house is really, really quiet. There's nobody asking me for anything or any questions. And so, yeah, 5 a.m. is my time.
Nice. You already told us about Jim, Mr. Collins, but who's another person that's had an impact on your career?
So if I had to think of another person who was not someone I actually somebody I just recently met in person, is an author. So Jeb Blunt wrote the book Fanatical Prospecting. I actually got to meet Jeb in person a couple of weeks ago at his conference, Outbound in Atlanta, and then interview him on my podcast, which was really cool. But Jeb's books were the lifeline that I needed when I started in sales, and nobody gave me any kind of training at all. So when I think of, when people get into sales and they're like, what do I do? Where do I start? His books are so easy. They're so simple. They're easy to read. And so if you had to ask me, like, early on in my career, who was really influential, and again, I don't blame any of the people I worked for. They were doing what was done for them. Right. So he was kind of the first sales trainer that I had. I listened to his books. I read his books. I literally have all of them. I just bought the new one. It came out 2 days ago. I bought it the day it came out because I'm like, they're always good. Right. So that would be my person who, again, not necessarily someone that I knew before 2 weeks ago, but it's been really cool.
And it sounds like you've known him for years.
Right. I feel that way.
What's your pump up song?
What is your pump up song? I'm like there's like 82 different songs, but in my head, I'm like, what are we getting booked for was my question. So funny story. I have a 4-year-old, and his song currently, when he is allowed to talk to Alexa, because him and Alexa have a love-hate relationship, is he will ask you to play Thunderstruck. So we listen to a lot of Thunderstruck in my house. And it comes from just my husband and I are both athletes. Like it was on every like warm up CD like that we ever had. So in my head, like just the beginning of that song, like instantly like makes my heart beat a little bit faster. And we've been listening to it a lot lately. So, because Davis really enjoys it. So that would be the song today.
Nice. What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier in your sales career?
The mindset piece. I wish I would have learned how to manage my mind. It makes me so angry how much money I have left on the table over the years because I had a mismanaged brain.
That is powerful. All right. I think I know the answer to this. What book has been most impactful on your sales career?
Fanatical Prospecting. No questions asked.
That was an easy one for Ashleigh. What's one way someone could have been a better ally to you?
That's an interesting question because while growing up in a male-dominated field, I never felt, because my job was performance-based, so I never felt like I wasn't given the attention or the job or whatever because I was female, right? I never really experienced that personally, but I remember when I was pregnant with my son, I was traveling. I was a channel sales manager, and there was only 1 or 2 other women in the team that I was on, and both of them older than me, both of them with children, and I really wish that like one of them would have pulled me aside and been like, you don't have to like work like you're not pregnant. Because I did, like, because I was like, well, I just got to pretend like this isn't happening because everybody else in the room is like, whatever. And so I didn't take the time to enjoy my first pregnancy or do any of those other things. I ran as long as I could until my doctor was like, we're done here. Like, I'm writing you a letter. Like, you're
Sorry.
to your company and we're done. You're not traveling anymore. And I was like, can I drive? And she was like, no, like you're going to stay home for the next 6 weeks. Like, that's just what you're going to do. My blood pressure was starting to increase. So I wish that someone would have had that conversation with me when I was pregnant and traveling and trying to run as hard and as fast as I could, that to just take a deep breath. And it was okay to experience both rapid growth in a career and pregnancy at the same time.
It's a good one. That's probably one of the best ones I've heard, honestly.
That's
no offense
brilliant.
to previous people that have been on, but
that's
one
brilliant.
spoke to me.
No one said that yet. That's the
Yeah.
big thing. Like a lot of it, like not that there's common threads, but a lot of it's about just feeling seen and heard. No one's mentioned pregnancy. So yay. Let's start talking about the things we need to talk about that is an actual part of life. All right. So flipping that, what's one way you're working to be a better ally for others?
I want to create, like, literally, like, that's the company I've created that's what I want to do. I want to train badass salespeople. I want to create badass sales organizations, both internally and externally. I want to be an ally for all of those people, right? So for me, I literally think that at this point in the game, it's like my life's work to really change the narrative around sales in general. Like, let's just stop with all of this, stereotypes and all of the drama. So I work hard creating content every day around it. I work hard building that inside my company. And then, we, in my coaching program, we work every other week with our CEOs, and I bring it to the table with our CEOs all of the time. As a leader of a rapid growth company, we need to pay attention to these things. So I'm coming at it from all angles at this point in the game.
That's awesome. And then actually, I'm going to ask 2 questions. Ashleigh doesn't know this. I have a bonus question for you at the end. But what's your guilty pleasure at the end of a long day?
I watch a lot of crime TV. I have watched every episode of Criminal Minds, like NCIS, like all of it, like just the really gory, like total opposite end of the spectrum. Like, I love crime television. Love it. I know.
What's your favorite show, just to piggyback?
Ooh, favorite crime TV show would be Criminal Minds. Was really good. I was really bummed, but I've been watching SWAT lately, and SWAT is a really good one too. So it's a front runner, but it's just because Criminal Minds there's no new ones anymore. So I've stopped watching it. So SWAT's the front runner right now.
Nice. And then my bonus question is, if I was prospecting you and I wanted to send you some barbecue in Kansas City, what would you choose there in KC?
Jack Stack. Jack Stack all day.
Good answer. No Q39, no Joe's, just straight Jack Stack.
Jack Stack.
Fair enough. Expensive date. Yeah.
I'm in sales. I have very expensive taste, Ryan. I'm noticing this about a lot of salespeople. A lot of us are like, we like, notoriously for this thing, we get a taste of the high life, and not that we expect it, but now we're driven to work for it.
Right.
Yep. So we had at my wedding, we had rehearsal dinner was at Jack Stack's.
Okay.
I had Joe's when I got in town on Wednesday. And then on Sunday before I left, I had Q39. So I made sure to hit my rounds. And I'm already craving to come back because Indiana doesn't have burnt ends.
See, that's why I like Jack Stack. They have the best burnt ends and their sides are better. I've never shared anybody's love of Joe's. And Q39 is still new to the scene. So I'm a Jack Stack girl.
Fair enough. Go Q39's good. Definitely worth a visit.
Okay. Try again.
See, I'm going to piss off half the country here and say I have not found barbecue that I like.
You haven't been to Kansas City.
I haven't. Full disclosure, I have not been to Kansas City. I should also disclose I only started eating meat about 4 years ago. So eating meat in general is new to me. So barbecue is like a next level meatness.
So,
and I know Brian Smith's been working on me for like 2 years remotely trying to get me to try different things. I'm trying. But
we had a couple of vegan and I think a vegetarian at the rehearsal dinner. And she was like, it smells too good. I have to try a bite. And she was like, yeah, this is insane. This is unbelievable. And she's like, kept going back and getting more burnt ends. And then I was like, you need to slow down because there's this symptom. If you eat too much barbecue, it's called the itis. It's not good for a wedding.
The first time I went to an Argentinian steakhouse, that was my first experience with that.
So it's safe to say she did not make it out for drinks the night before the wedding for rehearsal dinner. She was like, nah, I'm tired. I'm going to sleep.
Yeah, your body needs to focus for a bit. And on that delightful note, Ryan, how can people find you? How can they get in touch?
Yeah, I am very easy to find. So the website for my company is dailysalesondemandforceos.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just Ryann Dowdy. I'm a very avid open networker. So I would love to hear from y'all, but we hang out on all the social platforms. So yeah.
We'll put all the links in the show notes. Ryann, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, listeners, for listening to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. If you enjoyed this, please share it with your friends, share it on social, hit us up on all of our social channels. And please, please, please leave us a review on your podcast catcher of choice. It makes a huge difference in us showing up for new people, new discoveries, and improving visibility. So with that, thank you all so much. And we will see you next week for another episode.